Top 5 most controversial topics in the Bible you won't believe. The Bible, whether you love it or have questions about it, is a book that's always sparked debate. And honestly, some parts of it are downright shocking. I mean, who knew that ancient scripture could be this controversial, right? We're talking about some of the most head-scratching, jaw-dropping, and intense topics that will leave you questioning everything you thought you knew. Let's dive into the top 5 most controversial topics in the Bible. 1. Why does God allow suffering? This one hits hard, right? Why would a loving God allow innocent people to suffer? It's a question that's haunted me, and probably you, for a long time. Take the book of Job, for example. Here's a guy who literally loses everything. His wealth, his family, his health, all gone. And for what? He's a good guy. But God's answer? He doesn't exactly give Job a clear-cut explanation. Instead, God tells him that his wisdom is beyond understanding. For many, it feels like a cop-out. But the fact that Job still submits to God's plan, even without knowing the reasons, is kind of profound. The thing is, we might never fully understand the reasons for suffering. Some say it's to test us, others say it's a consequence of living in a broken world. But whatever the reason, it's a topic that continues to spark heated debates. 2. What's the deal with hell? Okay, let's talk about hell. If you've ever wondered, is hell really a place of eternal fire, or is it just a metaphor? Zrenia vinyadin. For centuries, scholars and theologians have argued about whether hell is a literal place of eternal torment or something else entirely. Jesus talks about it in places like Matthew 25:46, describing it as eternal punishment, but there's no clear answer on what that actually means. Personally, I've always struggled with this idea of eternal punishment. I mean, if hell is eternal, what does that say about God's love? But others argue that hell is more about separation from God, not necessarily physical suffering. And here's where it gets interesting. Some people believe in universal reconciliation, which suggests everyone, even the wicked, will eventually be reconciled to God. So, which side of the debate do you fall on? It's mind-blowing, and it's a debate that's definitely not going away anytime soon. 3. Can women lead in the church? Here's another one that's been a hot topic for ages. The Bible seems to contradict itself on this. Paul writes that women should be silent in church, 1 Corinthians 14, but then there are examples of women leading and teaching throughout Scripture. Take Deborah in Judges 4. She was a judge of Israel, a leader. Or Priscilla in Acts 18, who taught Apollos, a male preacher, about God. So, why does Paul say what he says? For me, this is a tough one. I see both sides. On one hand, the cultural context of Paul's time was very different, but on the other, there are clear examples of women doing amazing things in the early church. Should women be allowed to lead today? That's a question that's still being asked across different denominations. What do you think? 4. Why did God order the destruction of whole nations? Okay, this one is disturbing. I'm talking about the Israelites wiping out entire nations at God's command. The story of Jericho is one of the most intense ones. Joshua leads the Israelites in a siege, and they destroy everything in sight. Same with the Amalekites in 1 Samuel 15. It's tough to wrap my head around this, honestly. The idea that a loving God would command such brutal violence is hard to reconcile with the God of peace that we often hear about. But here's the thing. Some believe that this violence was part of a divine plan for the Israelites to take the Promised Land. Others think these events were exaggerated in the retelling. For me, it raises a serious question. How can we reconcile God's command for violence with His message of love and peace? 5. Predestination versus free will. Who chooses who's saved? This one is a real brain buster. Does God predetermine who's going to heaven or hell, or do we have the free will to choose? Ephesians 1 talks about God choosing us before the foundation of the world, which sounds a lot like predestination. But then there's the whole argument of free will. Can God really be in control of everything and still give us the choice to choose our fate? It's a struggle for me, because on one hand, God's sovereignty is key, but on the other hand, I believe our choices matter. It's hard to fathom how both of these things can be true at the same time. Some say it's a mystery, others say it's more about our relationship with God. But the bottom line is, it's one of the most debated topics in theology. Conclusion. The Bible isn't just a book of rules or inspirational stories. It's a collection of complex, sometimes controversial teachings that leave us with more questions than answers. Whether it's the problem of suffering, the nature of hell, the role of women in the church, the violent commands in the Old Testament, or the question of predestination versus free will, these topics force us to wrestle with tough questions about God, humanity, and faith. And maybe that's the point. These debates aren't new. They've been around for centuries, and they remind us that the Bible is still alive, still challenging us, and still shaping how we view the world today. So what do you think? Do these controversies make you question everything, or do they deepen your understanding of the divine? Let me know in the comments below.